jump right in and ask some questions today. So the first one, hi, Dr. Doreen and Shannon. First off, congrats to the bride.
Oh,
For those
thank
of you
you
who are just joining us, Dr. Granpeesheh got married. It's what you're like 15 days a bride now.
Is it 50? Yeah,
it's
that's
15
right.
days.
July 1st.
Yes, we all
Thank
offer our
you.
congratulations. They go on to say, I have been hearing a lot about ATEC scores. My son is 3 and 8 months and has been with CARD for 9 months, 40 hours. My 2-year-old is going to start with CARD within the next couple of weeks. So I did the ATEC, and the 3-year-old scored 90 and the 2-year-old scored 57. What the heck do these numbers mean, and what is ATEC? Also, I write to you guys practically every week. Love you guys. You've taught me so much, by the way. You mentioned one time to give you my son's info so you can oversee his progress and if he's going in the right direction. So they have given their name.
Oh, good.
And which office that they're in, which I'm going to give off the air, so we're not sharing that. And thank you all you do for all of us desperate moms, and God bless you both, and God bless to you as well. So
thank you very much, first of all, for those kind words, and I will take a look at your kids, both of their files. So the ATEC is the Autism Treatment Evaluation Checklist. It was made by our dear friend Steve Edelson, who was on the show.
Oh, how wonderful, from ARI.
ARI, that's right. And the ATEC is an evaluation checklist. So the score indicates severity in different areas that have to do with autism. I don't know why you are completing the ATEC. I think the only insurance or funding agency that I know of that was requiring it was Magellan, and I don't think they are anymore. I might be wrong. It's not a standard test. It's an evaluation checklist. So it kind of just gives you, this is why Steve made it. Let me just say, the reason that he made it wasn't for the purposes of screening or diagnosis or anything. It was basically for the purposes of the family or the physicians or whoever to look and see if there's been actual progress with an intervention. So the concept with the ATEC was that it's a checklist. So you as a parent are filling out what you think, and then a year later you fill it out again, and it's sort of an objective measure of whether you see improvement and whether a treatment was effective. So don't worry. I wouldn't worry too much about the scores on it at any point, because it's not normed based on age, and so it doesn't mean like 90 is better or 20 is worse or whatever. That's not how it does count up the severity level, but then the real reason for the ATEC is just a pre-post comparison to see if your child has improved from where they were.
Okay.
What we helped Steve with this test years ago. We administered it to, gosh, I can't remember how many kids, because he was trying to do some reliability data. I am not sure if he's gotten the ATEC validated right now. I don't know yet. I know he was in the process of trying to validate it. I don't know if it happened. We don't use it unless a funding agency asks us to. It's on our website though, actually, because we consider it a good tool for parents. We use standardized measures, and standardized measures, of course, require a lot more time and work and so on. But it is it's a broader view, and it's helpful for parents because it kind of just gives, how's your child in certain areas, and it asks you specific questions about what you think has improved or not.
So
that's really the only reason the ATEC is there.
Would it be overstating that then to say that when this is really going to be useful to her is if she does it again in a year?
Yeah, or in 6 months or whatever it is. And what I would suggest you do if you're a CARD client is you can pretty much see the same things as the ATEC on skills, but much more detailed. So you have a skills account. One of the things that parents don't realize is when you're at CARD, you have a skills account, and skills gives you daily and weekly and monthly progress. So you don't need to wait a year to look at your progress. You're seeing it every single day. I think we need to provide much more training and orientation, I guess, to our families so that they actually do start start using skills. Very few of the families review their skills accounts.
Yeah, and I can imagine that a lot of people would want to. So
it's awesome. Yeah, it's one of the benefits.
We should really think about that, about what we can do to help support families to know how and when to use that.
Right.
So thank you so much, and we appreciate when you write it in. This is the fact that you're using this hour to get more information and to be able to have a conversation with Dr. Granpeesheh is exactly what we want you to do. So kudos to you for using it well. We got another question who says, my son has just been diagnosed at 2. My son has been diagnosed at age 2. Now he is 18. Social Security denied him and said he is not disabled. What can I do? Okay, so he's been diagnosed since 2.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I don't know what the basis of the denial is. I would assume that you will need to go see a professional and get an updated diagnosis. Clearly, if it's 16 years old, you're going to need an updated diagnosis, and it might be a completely different diagnosis. I mean, when 16 years ago,
18. He's 18. I'm sorry.
He's 18, and he was diagnosed at 2.
At 2, that's what it is.
Right. So 16 years ago, that would have been. You would have been on the DSM-4, I think. Yeah. You would have been on the DSM-4, and that just changed to the DSM-5, so his diagnostic criteria would have changed. He might have even been on the DSM-3. I'm not sure at this point, 16 years. But you should definitely go see a professional and get a new diagnostic done, and then submit that for Social Security. Or I think sometimes I fill out paperwork on kids that I've already seen, so if he has a current provider who's licensed, then they might be able to fill that paperwork out for you.
And my understanding with Social Security is that it is very natural to be denied in the first round, no matter what the disability is.
I don't know, yeah.
And, I hear that from people all the time, that it's just sort of, that happens frequently, that it's often through the appeal process that people get a yes.
I see.
But you may want to seek professional, as you said, somebody that has expertise in this field, but you may want to seek a lawyer to help.
Or I think going back to the organization 211, I think they also assist with things like filling out Social Security benefit paperwork.
And you and I had a conversation about 211 the other day, a really amazing organization that helps connect people
to resources.
Absolutely, and especially if your child is under the age of 5, can sometimes help you with funding. A really amazing organization.
Yes.
So reach out to them and see, and then let us know what you find out so that we can better help people when they have that question again. All right, we're going to take a short break and be back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We have with us in the studio right now live Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. She is a true expert in the field of autism and a visionary. She's answering your questions right now on the live feature, so feel free to write those in right now on our homepage, autism-live.com. Okay, from time to time, everybody loves to ask you this question, and I kind of feel like I know what you're going to say, but we've got some advice on sleep issues that they want. Already tried melatonin, clonidine, schedule, sleep study, and many others. My son is 13, has had sleep issues since 3.5, been really bad over the last 2 years, and they said hormones with 2 question marks.
Oh gosh, well, hormones definitely don't make it better. So yeah, that could be part of the issue. But sleep, the first thing is that myself, and I can't, endorse anything, but myself, I and my family and many friends take this form of melatonin called Tranquil Sleep, which is a chewable medication. It's a chewable tablet, and it has melatonin and 5-HTP tryptophan and theanine. And I would say the melatonin on its own does absolutely nothing for me or my kids or a lot of people I know, and even if it does, it wakes you up in 4 hours. And this thing is great. So the combination, that's one thing that I've heard a lot of people say is fabulous for them. The combination of Benadryl and melatonin seems to be very effective for a lot of families. I'm not advising you on this, but I'm just telling you something that is effective for other people who have very difficult time with their children. Is just 25 milligrams, or depending on the size of the child, is 1 Benadryl, which is 25 milligrams diphenhydramine, as well as like 3 milligrams or 6 milligrams of melatonin, or this tranquil sleep. That combination seems to be very effective. Having said that, sleep also does have some aspects of behavioral learning in it, and a lot of times it's what happens, a lot of times the antecedent to waking up is some very, very tiny sound or change in the environment, and we don't realize it because we're not as sensitive as our kids are. And so it would be very important to kind of sweep through the room and the environment, that area of the house, and make sure that there's not little things like maybe sprinklers are turning on in the neighbor's house at 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. These are things that parents have taught me over the years, that there's some very, very subtle change in the environment and the individual wakes up. Make sure that the room is as dark as possible. The presence of light during the night prevents us from producing the melatonin we need to produce. So we really need to have darkness. It really does help. What I found is very, very helpful is one of those air purifier things. Mine is on turbo all the time, and it makes a sound. So it's a it's white noise in the background, and it's really effective, strangely. Like, you might initially think, wow, this is kind of disturbing because it's loud, but it is amazing because it really blocks out all the other sudden sounds of the night. It really does block out other sounds. In fact, if I have that on, I have a hard time hearing the TV, even if it's on, because it just, the white noise blocks things out, and it's pretty effective. So, just making the environment as calm and serene as possible, making sure that you spend the night yourself in that room and figure out what's going on. That's the antecedent control side of it. And the consequence control is when the individual wakes up, when the child wakes up, make sure that they don't eat. That's one very important thing, because when you eat when you wake up, it becomes a very, very quick conditioning. And now your stomach's going to actually wake you up on schedule because that's the time to eat. So try to actually not do anything and keep the individual in the room even if they're awake. Because if the child learns that they can wake up and come to your bed, if they can wake up and go eat something, these things are basically rewarding the waking up process. And then, if it's something like having to go to the bathroom that wakes the individual up, then make sure they're reducing their drinking after 6 p.m. so that they have more ability to sleep through.
Okay, really good advice.
And then of course, all behaviorists should be able to assist you with sleep problems. Like ABA, we actually have sleep programs that we can do overnight. So our staff can help with that. And I don't know where you are, but a BCBA can help you with sleep.
Okay, wonderful. Want to move on to another question. My son has a fine tremor when attempting fine motor skills. I think he would benefit greatly from occupational therapy. Have you seen this in other children with autism? I have mentioned it to his pediatrician and neurologist, and I have not been satisfied with their answers. Please advise.
I have seen it, and I've seen it more than just in individuals with autism. And I've seen it with kids with ADHD. I've seen it in individuals with high levels of anxiety. I've actually even seen it with allergies. So I'm not too concerned about a high tremor because it's a mild tremor, but it's continual. But as long as you've been through a neurologist, I would say, that's where I would go, because the only reason you'd be concerned is if this is developing into some neurological, or is a symptom of some severe neurological disorder like Parkinson's or, any other kind of neurological issue. Outside of that, I've found kids who are begin to take ADHD medication, this stops, and anxiety medication tends to improve it with some individuals as well.
Okay.
Other than that, really, when it comes to something like tremors, you need to gain the expertise of a neurologist. And I'm sorry if you haven't found the right answers. You should probably see another neurologist.
Yeah, I think anytime and it happens so often, all doctors aren't going to click with all people, but anytime we don't feel like we got enough of an answer, anytime, whether it's a child with autism or it's a tremor or anything that's going on with your healthcare, we have to listen to that inner self. I think it's one of the hardest things about autism, Dr. Granpeesheh, that we, for so long, we thought something was going on and somebody poo-pooed it, and it becomes hard after that to listen to our gut, but we need to get back to that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. We question ourselves a lot. And then on the other hand, we also need to be aware and open to what professionals are telling us, because sometimes I find that we're in denial.
Yes.
And it's really, being in denial is more about our own egos than it is about our child's symptoms. And I have parents that I meet where all they really want to be able to tell me at intake is how intelligent the child is, and I'm very aware of that. I am aware that children with autism are very intelligent, and so it's more, if you get stuck on something like that, you have to be aware of what people tell you as professionals, and then you have to have the self-confidence, I suppose, to kind of see what feels right to you.
Okay.
The tremor issue, the last point I want to make on that is, pay attention to whether it increases during high stress, high anxiety situations. If that's the case, then you know for sure this is an anxiety-related symptom.
Okay, great advice. We're going to take another break and be back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she's answering our questions, and we're learning so much. So I want to move on to the next one. My son has ASD and is currently enrolled in a private Jewish day school. The school is fairly accommodating to his special needs, but he struggles with social nuances of classroom interactivity, and he is struggling to make friends and get along. Are there any resources that can help us get an aide into his classroom to help facilitate appropriate behavior so he does not ostracize his classmates unintentionally with his eccentricities? And we don't have an age on this child, and we don't have a location.
That's okay. I feel like I get this situation.
All right.
I've had so many kids in this situation.
Okay.
So you need, I guess you need an advocate or an attorney as a resource first, because you do need to get an aide. There's two ways to get an aide. The first way to get an aide is to just go through the school system, and you go to an IEP and you'll request a one-to-one aide, and then the school will most likely say no, because it sounds like your child's pretty high functioning. So then the school will probably say no, and if they say no, then it takes you through the process of, trying to get an advocate, and then going to mediation possibly, and if that doesn't work, then going to due process, which I don't think it'll get that far, because if you're only asking for an aide, that's not a major thing, and you can just get that in the IEP and it will happen. But the problem is that the majority of the aides are not trained and they don't care. And I mean, I've been to schools where the aide is outside having a cigarette instead of watching the child and doing what they're supposed to do. So the other way to go about this is that you go to an agency first, so like a provider like CARD or any other ABA agency, and I don't know where you are, but in California this is very common, and in many other states. Some states are very strict about school process, but you should be able to manage this. Years ago it used to be much harder. So you get an agency, and then the agency does an evaluation and makes a recommendation that your child needs an aide. And so that's what I would do, for instance. And then I would say, but I wouldn't just give the child an aide. I never just give the child an aide, because I need a home program running concurrently, because what I teach in the home program, it's one thing to have an aide there who is going to assist the child and, interact and teach the child on the job sort of more appropriate skills, but at the same time I kind of need the work at home, the tutoring, where the child really starts to learn things like, oh, I'm being, arrogant, or I'm not reacting to other people's facial expressions, or I'm not really reading social cues appropriately. And that's where you work on those things at home, and then they're kind of mainstream or integrated into the school environment. So you could also start with an agency, and the agency will write you a letter of recommendation or a report based on evaluating your child, and then that is what you take to the school. And then the school, and when an agency is involved, I don't know about all other agencies. Some other agencies work together with the school. With us, we will want our aide, so it's not really a school district aide, it's one of our people, and then the school might fight that a little bit more, but then obviously once you get it, it's much higher quality.
Yeah.
These days, the schools don't fight it very much because there's also insurance funding, so they know that they're not going to get stuck with the whole bill. In the old days, like maybe 10 or 20 years ago, they used to fight it pretty significantly because they were worried about opening the door. But, I'll just tell you as an organization about, like right now for us in California alone, I would say it's probably about 70% of all of our kids are funded by insurance, and only about 30% of our not even, I would say maybe 10% of our overall funding is school districts, and the other 20% is probably regional centers. But so it's not a major thing. You should be able to get an aide funded by the school to accompany your child, and then they have to follow a series of steps and programs to help with all social areas. You sound like you're very involved, and you sound very eloquent, and that you know your child very well, and your child sounds high functioning. So I would really recommend for you to get into skills advanced cognition. This is the new subdivision of skills, which is really all about advanced stuff. And I think I'm not sure if it's public. I think it is public now.
I have not seen this, and
yeah,
I want to go in right now and look at this.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the breakout of the skills higher area curriculum.
Very cool.
And it is pretty cool in that it just focuses on these social areas.
Okay. Sounds exciting to me too. And I love the idea of starting, whenever you're in an argument, if it's just you standing and having an argument and they have a bunch of people on their side that are experts, you're really not going to be as effective as if you have experts on your side.
Oh, yes.
And so if you start with a provider that's is going to be able to give you a good quality aid, and they are on your side saying your child needs it, your fight is going to be that much easier.
Absolutely.
So I love this advice, because it's more efficient, and you'll actually get something that's worthwhile. I can't tell you how many parents I've heard that they fought to get the aid, and then what they got was something
really bad.
It wasn't what they were looking for. So I love this advice. It's much, much more effective. And then do us a favor and write back to us and let us know how you do with that.
And I think the hardest part is getting the advocacy. We do know a few advocates and lawyers. And so if you need help finding someone, write into us and tell us where you are.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, somebody wants to know, and now I've lost it, of course. Well, let's go to this one instead. Does Medicaid cover ABA in Louisiana? We contacted a place that says it does, but it will cost $10,000 outside of that. My son is severely autistic, 4 and nonverbal. We need ABA desperately to give him a voice and a chance. Please help us.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. And we're in the process, I think, of getting approved. And when you receive Medicaid, I don't think there shouldn't be additional cost to you. So I'm not sure about all that, like why they're telling you that it'll cost you additionally. I would suggest that you contact, our contracts department here will help you. They know all the answers to all of these things. If you can either call our Louisiana office, which is Baton Rouge, and I think they might refer you back to contracts here centrally. And our contracts, I guess you call our main headquarters, which is, I don't know what the 800 number is, do you?
It's 800-345-CARD.
Oh, okay.
So I just recently figured out how easy that was.
That's awesome.
But I honestly think it might even be better. Just call that number, and they'll be able to put you through to
contracts.
Yeah. Well, and they'll also be able to help figure out, because they'll help you to figure out what might be the best course. They're really good down there.
I know they are,
but
they're really, really busy. And here's the other. 211 Louisiana will also help you.
Absolutely.
One of the things 211 does is fill out your Medicaid paperwork. And I think that is an amazing benefit.
Really, really remarkable. Okay, I found the other question. Is sensory processing disorder considered autism?
Oh, wow. What a fantastic question.
Yes, I'm glad I found it.
So, no, it's not. To answer your question, no, it's not. But it's really more of a matter of just perspective, I think. You know, a lot of the symptoms of sensory processing disorder are very similar to the symptoms of autism, or to, let's say, the causes of autism that persist. So let me just put it this way. Sensory processing problems, in my mind, tend to lead to the symptoms of autism. If you think about all the issues involved with sensory processing, and if that happens to you when you're very, very young as a developing brain, you are going to develop things like delayed speech and not knowing how to socialize and so on, because you are certain sensory stimuli are sort of entering or coming at you too strong, and you then tend to shut them off. And others are very difficult to decipher. I always refer to one of my recovered individuals who told me that the sound of language was background noise to him, and background noise and doors opening and so on were much, much louder. And so it was very difficult for him to be able to concentrate on language. And that's a complete sensory issue. And if you're not able to concentrate on a particular stimulus, you won't learn it as much as the things that are more prevalent in your system. Same thing with visual. I mean, I see some of my kids, I'm pretty sure they're aware of a lot of stuff. Like, I can see them checking things, right? But they don't give eye contact. And if you're not really able to give eye contact to a human being, you're not going to learn facial expressions. You're not going to learn all the nuances and messages that go with eye contact. So, or even being able to focus. I'm pretty convinced there's a lot having to do with the visual aspect of things with our kids, because they're so unable to look at things the same way we do. They have a completely different visual integrative field. It's very different for our kids. And like, even when you get eye contact, a lot of the kids will look at you just like this.
Yeah.
You know, there's something very significant going on. So in my perspective, the sensory issues are actually what lead to those symptoms we call autism.
Okay. All right. Really remarkable. We're going to take another break and be back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she's answering your questions on the live feature. So thrilled to have you here.
Thank
so
you.
I'm going to jump into another question. Why do children with ASD sometimes twist their hands and fingers into unusual poses?
I don't know. I have seen that, but I don't know. I really can't explain it. I mean, perhaps they're tensing the muscles. I've seen kids also do this, you know, just sort of like squeeze their muscles. I don't know if that's the same kind of feeling. Could also just be a habit that they've developed. It could also be something that's responding to sort of something you do in moments of anxiety. I honestly don't know. I mean, I observe it's not common. But I have seen it, and I'm not sure. And also, it might have something to do with, you know, how a lot of children, what's more common is they'll just, for instance, look at something. The other day I had a little girl, and she was looking at my nails or something, and then she did this little flipping on my nails, like flicking of her fingers, you know. So why do they do that? I'm not sure. It's related to the maybe not enough sensory input. I'm not sure.
You know, it was one of the things that I always wondered about when Jem did his STEM behaviors, and still he has some vocal things that he likes to do in his spare time. He can control it and choose when he does it, which is what was important to me. But I remember taking one day and just saying, I'm going to do all the things that he does and just see what the deal is. Because he was a hand flapper, that he would do this. And it was a day that I had a lot of anxiety, and I started doing this, and I went, you know, I feel better.
That's so interesting. That's funny.
I feel better. I don't know what it is about that that calmed me down.
Right.
And I thought, well, how interesting is that? And there were other things that I did that kind of woke me up. So,
well, I mean, there's this type of therapy in psychology, you know, tapping that involves and so that is also actually tapping key parts. I don't remember it. I got trained in it.
I did too. There's a whole like
and it starts here
and here. This
and
was
here, right.
Yes.
And you tap certain parts of your body, and it is like beyond belief effective for PTSD, for post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm not sure, you know, the science behind it. I mean, you are basically I guess, accessing certain energy channels and so on. But the fact that it works is undisputed. It is the primary type of intervention for people who've been through severe trauma.
Yeah.
So, there is a lot we don't know.
There is a lot we don't know.
Absolutely.
Really remarkable. Okay, so we're going to continue on. A bunch of people wanting to know when you're going to come, where they are. Somebody wanted to know if you were coming to New York. Dearest Dr. Doreen, when will you be coming to New York? I hope to attend one of your seminars someday here. My 5-year-old son finally got coverage with you guys from his insurance, Fidelis Care, and I'm extremely thankful to Deidre King. Just saw her in the documentary Sounding the Alarm. Thank you card. Thank you, Dr. Doreen.
Oh, thank you. We were so happy when that insurance company finally put us in network, and we got so many families in New York that needed that coverage. So we're thankful, and also to be able to help you and work with your child. I don't have anything planned for New York, although I should, because we're just in the middle of opening a site in Manhattan. And so I should probably visit somewhere towards the end of this year, probably somewhere fall, or it won't be winter. Is kind of a crazy time for me, but maybe in the fall I'll be coming out. Next week I'm in Washington, D.C. For just a couple of days, and and worst case scenario, what I tell everyone, God, I hope I can follow through on this. Next year is CARD's 25th anniversary, and I will be traveling and seeing as many of the offices as I can.
Okay.
So I'm excited about that.
Something to look forward to. Okay, and another person wants to know, hi, when will CARD be in Palm Beach County? I believe you are on the West Coast in Florida, but not in the East Coast where we live. We have CMS Medicaid.
Right. We're not in Florida yet. A lot of times people think that we are in Florida, and that's because there's another CARD there, Center for Autism and Related Disabilities.
Okay.
We've actually asked them numerous times, both personally and legally, to change their name because we own the name CARD, but they hide behind the University of Florida. They claim they're a part of the University of Florida, and the University of Florida has been there since 1800s, and so therefore private entities cannot file anything against universities. This is the same problem we have with CARD, which is associated with Johns Hopkins. Mm-hmm. If you're associated with a university, private entity can't do anything about you using the name, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're not in Florida. We are providing some services in the Fort Myers area, but not a lot yet. So I think we've started providing some services. We're in the process of looking at taking over an existing agency in Jacksonville. And if we take that agency over, obviously their entire thing would change to a CARD model. The only reason we would take them over is because they're already approved for Medicaid, and also they have BCBAs that we would retrain, and they have staff. So that would be very helpful to us. That's Jacksonville. I haven't looked at anything further south. I haven't looked at, I should look at Miami and Fort Lauderdale and Palm Beach and so on, but I haven't. And it's time for us to do that. And, when parents assist us is really what helps us move forward. As I said, I think we just got approved with Medicaid in Florida, or we're very close to getting approved, and if we take over this other agency, we'll have the approval anyway. So that would not be an issue. We would receive that funding and we'd be fine with that. But it's a matter of getting us started there. And the way we start is always when a few families get together and require services, then we'll send out staff just to start with one family or two families, and then as it grows, it gets to a point where it's feasible for us to actually open a site.
I always think back to, we did an interview with, I cannot remember which family it was in Boston that had been a part of when they were one of the first families that you serviced in Boston. And we were talking, and she said, we always thought of it was like a field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. And she said, we were determined that we were going to have CARD services, and it wasn't here. And we got together with some other families, and now there's 2 offices in Boston because that group of families built it, and CARD came. And that's very true. If you want CARD anywhere, whoever is listening, if you want CARD, get together some families and have that infrastructure of families that want to card.com, you can start having those remote services, and card will come to where you are.
Absolutely. And I will say that aside from the first card and the second card, which was New York, all other cards, and we're up to about 30 now, all other centers were initiated by parents, like very clearly. And plus, we've closed down a few over the years, which were international, and turned them into franchises. Those were initiated by parent groups as well. It's always about what the parents put together. But if you are interested in having a card near you, just contact our expansion director, which is John Galley, and I've given his information out a few times. It's j.galley, Galle, at centerforautism.com, and he's right on that.
Okay, next question. Good morning. Attention from my husband is my son's most powerful reinforcer. We are working on decreasing his disruptive and property damage, which are negative attention seeking. Can we use him, Dad, as a reward, or should we schedule time with him during the day, like after day program every 30 minutes, he can spend a few minutes with his dad to help manage his aggressive outbursts? My son is 24 and understands everything that is said to him. He can be very verbal, but often chooses not to use his words. And they said, thank you. I think it's a great question.
It's a great question. And you certainly should consider the attention from dad as a reinforcer. Absolutely. But be very cautious. You don't want dad, I think I read or I heard you're thinking about having dad work on the aggression issues. I wouldn't do it that way. I would actually have, get a professional involved, because then the way that you do it is you basically, if there has been no aggression that period of time, let's say that day or that morning or that hour, then the child gets to spend some time with dad. And the time spent with dad is just fun.
Right.
Now, and it doesn't have to be like for every hour he spends an hour, not at all. It could be for every 3 hours or 4 hours or half day, and you gradually increase that the child is behaving well and doesn't have aggressive behavior. Then they spend 15 minutes with dad or half an hour with dad, whatever is effective. And that is important to do. But in terms of dealing with the aggression itself, it would be much more important that you do a whole functional assessment, figure out exactly when the aggression is happening, for what function, what reason, and then handle it appropriately.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful advice. We're going to take a short break and come back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen after these messages. Welcome back to Ask Dr. Doreen. We're here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. She's answering your questions on the live feature on autism-live.com. We've still got a couple of minutes, so you can be writing in your questions right now. And if we don't get to something, we keep them in the mix to answer them another week. So somebody wants to know, we've been talking a little bit about anxiety. Somebody wants to know, can you recommend some good social anxiety resources? My son has high-functioning autism and attends our local university, and she says thank you.
Gosh, anxiety is such a big factor for our higher-functioning individuals. I would, in terms of resources, and I hope it's there, I did a lot of research because I've given a few presentations on anxiety, and I would recommend that you go on the CARD website and look for my PowerPoint, my presentation. I think a lot of my talks are on the CARD website. I hope they are. If they're not, you can certainly email CARD, the general CARD email, and it will get to me saying, ask where are Dr. Granpeesheh's presentations.
And we did 2 shows with you on anxiety that featured that whole presentation. Exactly. And it's called Anxiety Show Part 1 and Anxiety Show Part 2. And
I really think you should take a look at that, because there's a lot you can do for anxiety, from medication to just exercises, breathing exercises, things that you can do, like reducing fear activities, desensitization. And then there's worksheets, there's books out there, there's a lot of stuff you can do, and it is very, very important. I've tried to put in those presentations as much as I could think of in terms of like little things, like giving the individual some item that is associated with comfort. There's a billion things you can do. So start there, and then I think that's probably your best bet, because I don't know too many psychologists who deal with kids on our spectrum, and I know most behavior analysts don't believe too much in cognitive things like anxiety. I do. I think anxiety is probably the biggest role in everybody's lives. And so therefore I think you can start with the resource that I give on the PowerPoint, and there's a lot of little books and so on listed there too.
Absolutely. And I've shared before on the show that I had debilitating, there's the word I want, anxiety, and even I got to a panic disorder time. And I have shared before on the show that I did cognitive behavioral therapy to get better. And there was a workbook that they made me get that's called the Anxiety and Panic Disorder Workbook.
Great.
And you can get it at Barnes & Noble.
Great.
And it's just worksheets that you go through yourself. And then I had, somebody that I would talk through them with, but those worksheets were really honestly the thing that did the ticket for me.
That's awesome.
It just restructured how I thought about certain things and gave me, what it did is it gave me a replacement behavior that when the panic would come up, I had other things to do.
That's very good.
The worksheets gave those to me.
That's very good.
And I've recommended that to many people and said, get that workbook.
Wonderful. I should get that for someone I know as well who could really benefit from that. But the thing, and that's fabulous that they worked as a replacement, so you'd already gotten to the point where you would reach out to it when it was beginning to happen. For me, I guess I think everything I've learned in psychology about anxiety helps me very significantly. If it's a very high anxiety-provoking situation, I immediately turn to all the things I know. And I've tried to do that for my kids. Because once you learn more about anxiety, it just doesn't make sense anymore. It's kind of like, oh, okay, this is just the perfectionist in me, or oh, okay, this is just that and that, so fear of failure or embarrassment, all these things, and then it becomes very clear to you how to deal with it. But if you're not able to recognize it, and it does go to the level of being panic disorder, it's really debilitating.
Yeah.
Truly.
And just what you were saying reminded me, too, that Evelyn Gould, who we have on the show from time to time, who talks about acceptance commitment therapy, talks about the book called The Reality Slap, that is written by
That's a very good
by a
book
parent of a child on the autism spectrum, which is just incidental to what the book is about, which I love. That it's incidental, but that that he understands what he's talking about.
It's a great book.
And talking about how when you're having those feelings, that looking at what your moral compass is and why this matters to you so much, which puts it in a context that you don't have to panic. Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
So and that's the book called The Reality Slap. It might be something good for you to read, and for a 23-year-old who's going to college, might be something that he could benefit from as well.
Absolutely, or the worksheets that you just mentioned.
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful. All right, so this is a question that I'm really interested in. Why does my child speak more after we spin him? And we saw this in our son when he was little too.
Really?
So what's the deal with that?
Let's see. From a physiological perspective, I suppose it is increasing neurotransmitters for sure, because you're producing sort of that adrenaline goes up, right, when you're spinning him, so then you're modifying neurotransmitters. So this would probably be someone whose neurotransmitters are off balance. Most of us are not really well balanced. Neurotransmitters have a very direct relationship to what we eat. So that would probably explain it. And of course, the primary medication that works with a lot of children is the SSRIs, which are the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and serotonin is a neurotransmitter. A lot of our kids who are sort of don't show signs of empathy or so on, that would be dealing with their dopamine, but it's all neurotransmitters. So that would probably make sense why that happens. It has something to do with a rush, surge. A lot of parents tell me that their kids speak a lot more or become much more awake and so on when they have a fever. And that might have something to do with it as well, because of obviously fevers are metabolic change. So, we don't know enough about autism, but I'm pretty sure that it would have something to do with a surge of neurotransmitters.
We just looked at it as a gift when we discovered that. And how we discovered it, it was very popular 8-9 years ago for OTs to do something called astronaut training. And it's a very specific set of exercises that they'd put your kid basically on a turntable and turn them 10 times
Yikes.
one way and then
Yeah.
10 times. Now, I got dizzy watching it.
Yes.
I wanted to just, hurl watching
Yes,
it. And my
yes.
son loved
Loved
it.
it.
And he would come up off the thing and be talking in a sentence where he wasn't before. And it gave us all kinds of encouragement. Like, it
Yes.
wouldn't last.
Yes.
But it gave us encouragement that we knew the ability was there.
Absolutely.
And then to find other ways to bring it out that were more practical, because you can't take a turntable with you everywhere.
All the time.
Right?
That's really fascinating. That a lot of kids, as you know, love roller coasters.
Yes.
Like, they do so well with roller coasters, and that is similar. It's the same type of thing.
Yeah.
Gosh, we should do some studies on this. It's so fascinating.
love-
Is it still that way with him?
He doesn't spin anymore. And so we used to put him in the office chair and spin him.
Right.
And I don't know, I should try spinning him at home and see. But he would spin on his own accord, too. But he just doesn't do it anymore. And I'll tell you, one of the things that when we were in our first year at CARD, we talked about it with Sabrina, our case manager, and we were trying to decide whether to get the Disney season pass so that we could go on a regular basis. And she encouraged us, if we could afford it, to do that because it was his reward. And what we would find is that he would work really hard. We had Disney.
go there.
He had Disney dollars, and when he got a certain number of Disney dollars as a reward, we would go to Disneyland for an afternoon, not a long time, and he would go on all the rides that would spin and do all that. And we would find we would get good behavior because he wanted it, and then he would speak better for maybe 2 days afterwards.
So that's the thing, and I think part of the reason that Disney and all these places become reinforcing is because of the way kids feel after these rides.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing that no one has done something with this because it sounds so promising.
Yeah. Well, and as I said, for a long time, for like a year, the hot thing was for OTs to do that astronaut training. And I don't know if they still do it. I haven't heard much about it recently.
I haven't heard it at all.
Well, I'll hook you up with a resource to it because it was fascinating. We built a little turntable at
that
home
would
for a
be
while.
awesome. That's
because the
interesting.
office chair got to be too small for it. They had to lay down on one side and then lay down on the other side, and you have to spin them one way and the other way, and then they have to sit up, and then they have to put their head between their knees for one spinning. It was a whole series that we had to follow for our OT. But we would get some language out of it, and it gave us a lot of hope. I can't believe we're out of time.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for this time,
My
always,
pleasure.
and all the things that we learned. And I want to thank all of our viewers for what you write in. I learned so much from all of you. You know what I always say? We get through this together.
Yeah.
We all learn from each other. So, si se puede, right? So we have you next week?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And we're going to take a break now. And
Oh, actually, I think isn't next week? Next week is when I'm in
well, you were
Washington.
talking about being in Washington. That's why I
I'm
didn't
in
know if it was
Washington.
Wednesday.
Yeah. It's Tuesday, Wednesday,
All right,
Thursday.
well,
Unfortunately,
we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out and be back in touch with you guys.